I heard the crying before I understood where I was. It was soft, muffled, like the walls themselves were trying to swallow it. At first, I thought it was just my imagination playing tricks on me again, the kind that comes from growing up in places where silence was never really safe. But this was different. This was too real. Too close. I stood frozen in the hallway, my fingers still wrapped around the silver tray I'd been carrying, the polished surface trembling just enough to make the glasses clink softly against each other. No one else reacted. Not the guests in their tailored suits. Not the staff moving quickly past me with practiced smiles. Not even the guards posted at the end of the corridor like statues carved from stone. It was like I was the only one who could hear it. The only one who wasn't supposed to. I swallowed hard and told myself to move, to keep walking, to remember why I was here in the first place. My mom needed this job. We both did. She'd spent the entire morning reminding me to stay out of sight, to follow instructions, to never, under any circumstances, wander into places marked private. This was one of those places. I could tell just by the way the air felt heavier here, quieter, like even sound had rules it wasn't allowed to break. Still, my feet didn't listen. They never really did when something felt wrong. The mansion was massive, easily over 10,000 square feet, every inch of it glowing under warm lights and polished marble floors that reflected the kind of wealth I'd only ever seen on TV. Outside, I'd caught a glimpse of black SUVs lined up like silent guards along the driveway. Engines still warm, men in dark suits speaking in low voices that carried authority without needing volume. This wasn't just a wedding. This was his wedding. Alessandro Romano. I'd heard his name whispered more than once growing up, usually followed by lowered voices and quick glances over shoulders. People didn't talk about men like him out loud. Not where I came from. And now I was here, inside his house, serving drinks at his wedding. The thought alone made my chest tighten. Another cry slipped through the wall. Longer this time. Desperate. My breath caught, and before I could stop myself, I turned toward it. The sound was coming from behind a section of paneling that looked identical to the rest of the hallway. Smooth white with gold trim, nothing out of place unless you knew what you were listening for. I stepped closer, my sneakers barely making a sound against the floor, my heartbeat loud enough in my ears that I was sure someone would notice. I pressed my palm lightly against the wall. Cold. Solid. And yet, not entirely. There was something there. Something hidden just beneath the surface. You shouldn't be here. The voice came from behind me, low and controlled, and it sent a chill straight down my spine. I turned slowly, already knowing I'd been caught. A man in a black suit stood a few feet away, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp, watching me like I'd just stepped into a line I couldn't see. I opened my mouth to apologize, to say I got lost, that I was just looking for the kitchen, but the words didn't come out. Because the crying stopped. Just like that. Gone. As if it had never existed at all. The silence that followed was worse. He held my gaze for a second longer before nodding toward the main hall. The ceremony is starting, he said. Go back. I hesitated. Just for a second. Then I turned and walked away, each step feeling heavier than the last. But something had already shifted inside me. Because I knew what I heard. And whatever was hidden behind that wall, it wasn't meant to stay hidden forever. I tried to focus on my steps as I re-entered the main hall. But the sound of that crying still echoed inside my head like it had carved a place there that it refused to leave. The music had already started, soft strings filling the air as guests took their seats in neat rows of white and gold, their voices blending into a low hum of excitement and expectation. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Like a scene designed to distract from something just out of sight. I moved along the edge of the room, keeping my head down the way my mother had taught me, placing glasses on a passing tray station before slipping into position near one of the marble columns. From there, I could see everything without being seen. The aisle stretched across the polished floor, lined with white roses that smelled almost too sweet, their scent heavy in the air. At the far end stood the altar, framed by soft light and towering windows that overlooked the city skyline. And then he walked in. Alessandro Romano did not rush. He did not need to. The moment he appeared, the entire room shifted around him. Conversation stopped. Movement slowed. Even the music seemed to lower itself, as if it understood who had just entered. He wore a black suit that fit like it had been made for him alone, every line sharp, every detail intentional. But it was not the suit that held the room. It was him. The way he moved. Controlled. Certain. Like nothing in this world could surprise him. My breath caught before I could stop it. There was something about him that felt familiar. Not in a way I could explain, but in a way that made my chest tighten and my thoughts blur together. I had never met him. I knew that. And yet, when his eyes lifted and swept across the room, I felt something shift deep inside me, like a memory I could not quite reach. He did not stop when his gaze passed over me. Not fully, but there was a flicker. So quick I almost convinced myself I imagined it. As if he had noticed me, and then chosen not to. The ceremony began. Words about commitment. About trust. About forever. I tried to listen. I really did. But every sentence felt distant, muffled by the memory of that sound behind the wall. Then it came again. Softer this time. But closer. I stiffened, my fingers tightening against the edge of the column as my eyes darted toward the hallway I had just left. No one else reacted. Not the bride standing across from him, her smile perfectly practiced. Not the guests watching with admiration. Not the guards positioned near the exits, their attention fixed outward, never inward. I took a step back. Then another. My heart was beating too fast now, louder than the music, louder than the vows being spoken just a few feet away. I told myself to stay, to ignore it, to be smart. But the sound came again, faint but unmistakable, slipping through the walls like a secret that refused to stay buried. And this time, I heard something else beneath it. A voice. Weak. Strained. Whispering words I could not fully understand. Except for one. A name. I froze. Because it was not just any name. It was his. The name did not belong in that voice. It was too soft. Too broken. Like it had been held back for too long and finally slipped free when no one was supposed to hear it. Alessandro. I felt it in my chest the moment I recognized it. The way the sound seemed to pull something tight inside me without warning. My eyes lifted toward the altar before I could stop myself. He had not moved. Not visibly. His expression remained calm, unreadable, his posture steady as he stood across from the woman in white. But something was off. So subtle no one else would notice. The slightest pause between his breaths. The faint tightening along his jaw. As if he had heard it too. Or worse. As if he had been expecting it. The officiant continued speaking, his voice smooth and practiced, filling the silence that followed each vow. The guests watched with soft smiles, some leaning closer, others raising their phones just slightly to capture the moment. Everything appeared exactly as it should be. Perfect. Controlled. Untouchable. And yet I could not shake the feeling that something beneath it all was cracking. I took another step back, then another, slipping behind the column until I was fully hidden from view. My pulse would not slow down. It kept rising, sharp and insistent, like it was trying to warn me before my mind could catch up. The voice behind the wall had said his name. Not once, but twice. The second time clearer than the first. I closed my eyes for half a second, trying to steady myself, trying to think. There had to be an explanation. Something simple. Something that made sense. But nothing did. Because no one else was reacting. Not the guards. Not the staff. Not even him. And that was what scared me the most. I turned before I could change my mind. Quiet. Careful. My steps matched the rhythm of the music so they would not stand out. Each movement calculated the way I had learned growing up in places where being noticed meant trouble. The hallway was just as I had left it. Still. Silent. Too clean. The kind of silence that felt deliberate, like it had been placed there on purpose. I hesitated only for a second before moving closer to the wall again, my hand lifting slowly, almost as if I expected it to pull away from me this time. It did not. The surface was smooth beneath my fingertips, cool and unyielding. But now that I was paying attention, I could feel it. A difference. Not in the material, but in the air around it. A faint shift. Like a breath held too long. The crying did not come again. Not immediately. And for a moment, I wondered if I had imagined all of it. If the pressure, the noise, the unfamiliar place had twisted my senses into something unreliable. Then I saw it. Not a door. Not exactly. Just the smallest imperfection in the paneling. A line so thin it disappeared unless you looked at it from the right angle. My fingers traced it without thinking, following its edge until it curved slightly near the bottom. A seam. Hidden in plain sight. My heart dropped. Because walls were not supposed to have seams. A sound shifted on the other side. Not loud. Just enough. A movement. A breath. And then, barely audible, a whisper. Not calling out this time. Not crying. Just a single sentence that made my blood run cold. He cannot marry her. The words did not echo. They settled. Heavy. Final. Like they had been waiting for someone to hear them. And somehow that someone was me. I pulled my hand back from the wall as if it had burned me, my breath catching in my throat before I could steady it. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not imagination. There was someone behind that wall. Someone who knew exactly what was happening in that room, just a few feet away. Someone who should not be there. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it, but every thought collapsed into the same question. Why hide her? Because it was a her. I knew that now. There was something in the voice, in the way it broke around his name, that made it impossible to mistake. I glanced back toward the main hall, the soft swell of music drifting into the corridor as the ceremony continued uninterrupted, as if the world had decided to ignore what was happening just beyond its sight. No one had followed me. No. One had noticed I was gone. Or if they had, they did not care. That realization sent a different kind of chill through me. Because in a place like this, nothing happened without someone knowing. Which meant this, whatever this was, had been allowed. I stepped closer again before I could stop myself, lowering my voice instinctively even though there was no one there to hear me. Hello. The word barely left my lips, more breath than sound. For a moment, nothing answered. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, until I wondered if I had imagined that too. Then a shift. Closer this time. Right on the other side. You can hear me. The voice whispered, fragile but certain. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure it would give me away. Who are you? I asked, the question slipping out before I could weigh the risk of asking it. There was a pause. Not hesitation. Recognition. You are not one of them, she said softly, as if she had already decided that for herself. I glanced down at my uniform, at the simple black dress that marked me as staff, as invisible, as someone who did not belong in rooms like this except to serve and disappear. No, I answered quietly. I am not. Another pause. Longer this time. I pressed my hand back against the seam, feeling for anything that might give, any sign that this wall was more than it appeared. There had to be a way in. There had to be a reason it existed. Listen to me, she said, her voice tightening just enough to carry urgency without raising volume. You have to stop this. My chest tightened. Stop what? I already knew the answer, but I needed to hear her say it. Needed to understand why. The wedding, she whispered. He cannot marry her. The words settled deeper this time, cutting through whatever doubt I had left. I shook my head slightly, even though she could not see me. I cannot just walk in there and stop a wedding, I said, my voice barely holding together. You do not understand who he is. A faint sound came from the other side. Not quite a laugh. Not quite anything at all. Just something tired. I understand exactly who he is, she said. That is why this cannot happen. My breath hitched. Because there was something in her tone now. Not fear. Not confusion. Something else. Something heavier. Something that felt like truth. I leaned closer, my forehead almost touching the wall as if that would bring me closer to her, to whatever was hidden just inches away. Then tell me. I whispered. Tell me why. The silence that followed felt different from before. Not empty. Not distant. Waiting. And when she finally spoke again, her voice was so quiet I almost missed it. Because I am already his wife. The words did not make sense at first. They hung in the air between us, too heavy to move, too sharp to ignore. I felt my breath leave me in a slow, unsteady exhale, like my body had forgotten how to hold it. His wife. My mind rejected it immediately. It had to, because just a few feet away, he was standing at the altar, about to marry someone else in front of a room full of people who believed this moment was real, that it was valid, that it meant something. That is not possible, I whispered, more to myself than to her, my voice trembling despite how hard I tried to control it. He is getting married right now. Silence answered me for a second. Then, softer this time, almost like she was speaking through something that drained her strength with every word. I know. I pressed my hand harder against the wall, as if I could break through it just by needing the truth enough. Then explain it, I said, the urgency rising in my chest before I could stop it. Explain how that makes any sense. A faint sound came from the other side, like fabric shifting, like someone leaning closer, just as I was. They think I am gone, she said quietly. That I do not exist anymore. The way she said it made something cold settle in my stomach. Not gone like distance. Not gone like leaving. Gone like erased. I shook my head again, even though she could not see it. No, I said under my breath. People do not just disappear like that. In his world, they do, she replied, and there was no anger in her voice. No fear, just a kind of quiet certainty that felt worse than both. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to steady the way my thoughts were spiraling, trying to hold on to something solid. But there was nothing solid about this. Nothing that fit into the rules I understood. If you were telling the truth, I said slowly, forcing each word to come out clear, then why are you here? Another pause. This one heavier. Like the answer cost more than the others. Because it was safer, she said finally. For everyone. My chest tightened. Safer for who? I asked. This time, she did not answer right away. And in that silence, I heard it again. Not the crying. Not the whisper. Something else. A faint sound of movement beyond the wall. Not just her. Someone else was there. The realization hit me all at once, sharp and undeniable. She was not alone. There is someone else with you, I said, my voice dropping instinctively. Not a question, a statement. The air on the other side seemed to still. Then, softer than before, almost careful, yes. My heart skipped. Who? I asked, the word barely leaving my lips. I heard a breath. Uneven. Smaller. Not hers. And then a second voice, faint but clear enough to reach me through the barrier, spoke a single word. Papa. Everything inside me went still. My fingers curled slightly against the wall, my mind struggling to catch up with what I had just heard. Not a guess. Not a mistake. The child had said it with certainty. With recognition. My eyes lifted slowly toward the direction of the main hall, where the ceremony was still unfolding, where Alessandro Romano stood under soft light, promising a future that suddenly felt built on something I did not understand. How old? I whispered, my voice barely holding together. 5, she answered. The number hit harder than it should have, because it meant time. Years. A life that had existed quietly, hidden behind walls while the world outside moved forward without it. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Does he know? I asked, even though I was not sure I wanted the answer. The silence that followed told me everything before she even spoke. He knows enough, she said. And for the first time since I had heard her voice, I felt something shift that I could not name. Not just fear. Not just confusion. Something deeper. Because if he knew, then this was not a secret waiting to be discovered. This was a truth that had been buried on purpose. The realization did not come all at once. It settled slowly, like something sinking beneath the surface until it was too deep to pull back out. He knows enough. The words echoed in my mind, heavier each time, reshaping everything I thought I understood about the man standing just a few yards away, exchanging vows under soft light and quiet admiration. My chest tightened as I looked back toward the main hall, the music swelling slightly, as if building towards something important, something final. The guests leaned forward in their seats, their attention fixed on a moment that now felt distant to me, like I was watching it from behind glass. None of them knew, or maybe they did not want to. I turned back to the wall, lowering my voice even further. If he knows, I whispered, then why is he doing this? The question felt dangerous the moment I said it out loud, like it did not belong here any more than I did. On the other side, I heard a quiet shift, the faint sound of fabric brushing against something solid, followed by a pause that stretched just long enough to make me regret asking. Because some things are not about love, she said finally. Her voice had changed. Not weaker, clearer, like she had decided I deserved the truth now, even if it cost her something to say it. They are about power, about alliances, about keeping the right people close and the wrong ones where they cannot be seen. I swallowed hard, my fingers pressing against the seam again, tracing its edge as if I could find a way through it if I just looked long enough. And you? I asked quietly. Which one are you? There was no hesitation this time. I was the mistake, she said. The words did not break. They landed steady, like she had carried them for a long time and no longer needed to soften their weight. Something inside me shifted again, sharper this time. Because that was not how people talked about themselves unless someone had taught them to believe it. I glanced down the hallway, my senses suddenly heightened, every distant sound pulling at my attention. The ceremony was reaching its peak. I could hear it in the way the music slowed, in the way the voices grew quieter, like the entire room was holding its breath. There was not much time. I turned back, urgency rising in my chest. "Listen to me," I said, my voice barely above a breath. "If what you are saying is true, then this cannot stay hidden. People deserve to know. He deserves to be stopped." The moment the words left my mouth, I felt how small they sounded against everything she had just told me, against the world we were standing in. On the other side of the wall, I heard a soft exhale. Not disagreement. Something else. "No," she said gently. "You still do not understand." My brow tightened. "Then help me understand," I whispered. "Because right now, none of this makes sense." There was a brief pause, and then I heard movement again. Closer this time. As if she had stepped right up to the other side, mirroring where I stood. When she spoke again, her voice was so close it felt like it came from inside my own thoughts. "He is not the one you should be afraid of," she said. A chill ran down my spine before I could stop it. "Then who?" I asked, the question slipping out faster than I intended. For a second, there was nothing. No sound. No movement. Just that heavy, deliberate silence that had started to feel like a warning all on its own. And then, just before she answered, I noticed something I had missed before. A faint reflection along the polished edge of the wall. Not mine. Not hers. Someone standing behind me. Still. Watching. I did not turn right away. I did not dare. Because I already knew. In a place like this, secrets were never left unguarded. And whatever was behind that wall was never meant to be found by someone like me. I did not turn around right away. My body locked in place. Every instinct screaming at me to move, to run, to pretend I had never heard any of this. But my feet would not listen. They stayed planted against the marble floor, my hands still pressed lightly against the wall like it was the only thing holding me steady. The reflection did not move. It stayed there, just at the edge of the polished trim, tall and still, a dark shape against the soft glow of the hallway lights. Watching, waiting, measuring. My pulse climbed higher, each beat sharper than the last, but I forced myself to breathe slowly, quietly, the way I had learned when I needed to disappear in plain sight. If I moved too fast, it would confirm what I already feared, that I had been noticed, that I had crossed a line I was never meant to see. Behind the wall, the woman did not speak. The silence between us shifted, no longer just heavy, but alert. She knew too. I could feel it in the way the air seemed to tighten, like everything around us had become aware of something neither of us could see directly. I swallowed. Then slowly, carefully, I let my hand fall away from the seam. The movement felt louder than it was, like it echoed even though it made no sound. "I have to go," I whispered, barely shaping the words with my lips. I did not know if she heard me. I did not know if I would get another chance to come back. But staying here now felt like stepping deeper into something I did not understand. I turned. Slow. Controlled. Every movement deliberate. And when I finally faced him, the first thing I noticed was not his suit. Not the way it fit perfectly, or the way his presence seemed to fill the hallway without effort. It was his eyes. Dark. Focused. Already on me. Like they had been the entire time. He stood a few feet away, close enough that I could see the subtle shift of his expression, the way he took in everything at once. My position. The wall behind me. The distance I had tried to keep. There was no confusion in his gaze. No question. Only recognition. "You are not supposed to be here," he said. His voice was calm. Controlled. The kind of calm that made it clear he did not need to raise it to be heard. I nodded quickly, lowering my gaze just enough to appear smaller, less noticeable, less important. "I am sorry," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my hands felt unsteady at my sides. I got turned around. I was looking for the service entrance. The lie came easily. Too easily. He did not respond right away. The silence stretched between us, measured and deliberate, like he was giving me time to decide if I wanted to say something else. I did not. I could not. Because behind him, I could still hear it. Faint now. Almost gone. The echo of a truth that had no place in the world he was guarding. His gaze did not leave mine. Not even for a second. And then, something shifted. Not in his posture. Not in his tone. In his eyes. A flicker. Brief. Controlled. But unmistakable. Like he knew exactly what I had heard. "Go back to the hall," he said finally, stepping slightly to the side, creating a path without breaking his line of sight. "The ceremony is almost over." I hesitated. just for a fraction of a second, long enough to feel it. The weight of a choice I did not fully understand. Then I nodded again and stepped past him, careful not to brush against him, careful not to look back at the wall that now felt more real than anything else in that house. But as I moved away, I felt it. His attention following me. Not suspicious, not uncertain, certain, like I was no longer invisible, like I had already become part of something I had not meant to step into. And just before I reached the end of the hallway, I heard it again. Not from the wall this time. From behind me. His voice. Low. Quiet. Just enough for me to hear. What did you hear? My steps faltered for the briefest second. And in that moment, I understood something I could not ignore. This was no longer about a hidden room. Or a voice behind a wall. This was about him knowing and deciding what to do with that knowledge. My steps slowed before I could stop them. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me to feel it. The shift. The moment where everything inside me hesitated between running and turning back. His voice stayed in the air behind me, low and controlled, but impossible to ignore. What did you hear? It was not a question asked out of curiosity. It was a question that already knew there was an answer. I kept walking for 2 more steps, my eyes fixed ahead on the soft glow spilling out from the main hall, the sound of applause rising as if the ceremony had reached its final moment. If I just kept going, I could disappear back into the crowd, back into being invisible, back into safety. But the word echoed again in my mind. Papa. The way the child had said it. Certain. Familiar. Real. I stopped. The decision did not feel like a choice. It felt like something already made, something I was just catching up to. Slowly, I turned. He had not moved. He was still standing exactly where I had left him, his posture relaxed, but his attention locked on me with a precision that made it impossible to pretend otherwise. There was no anger in his expression, no urgency, just that same quiet control that seemed to define everything about him. I swallowed, steadying my voice before I spoke. I heard someone, I said. The words felt small the moment they left my mouth. Incomplete, but they were the only ones I trusted myself to say. His gaze did not shift. This house is large, he replied evenly. There are many people in it. The answer was smooth. Practiced. Meant to close the conversation without opening anything else. But it did not match what I had heard. What I had felt. I shook my head slightly before I could stop myself. Not like that, I said quietly. The silence that followed stretched longer this time. Not empty. Measured. Like he was deciding how much to let me say before stopping me. I took a breath, my fingers curling slightly at my sides. She said your name. I added, my voice lower now, more careful. And there is a child. The words settled between us, heavier than anything I had said before. For a moment, nothing changed. Then, just barely, I saw it. The shift I had been looking for. Not in his posture, not in his face, in his eyes. A flicker, controlled, but real. And then it was gone, replaced by something colder, more distant. You are mistaken, he said. Calm, final. The kind of statement that was not meant to be questioned. But I could not let it go. Not now. Not after everything. I am not, I said, before I could stop myself. The words came out stronger than I expected, carrying something I had not planned to show. Not defiance. Not exactly. Just certainty. His gaze sharpened slightly, not in anger, but in focus. Like I had just stepped further into something he had hoped I would avoid. You should return to your duties, he said, his tone unchanged, but something beneath it shifting just enough to make the air feel tighter. This is not your concern. I felt my chest tighten, the weight of everything pressing in at once. The hidden wall, the voice, the child, the way he was standing here, pretending none of it existed while the rest of the world celebrated him just a few feet away. Maybe it should be, I said quietly. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I could not take them back. The silence that followed was different now. Not measured, not controlled. Still, like something had just changed in a way that could not be undone. He did not respond right away. He just looked at me. Really looked at me this time. Not as staff. Not as someone passing through. As if he was seeing something else entirely. Something he had not expected. And then, slowly, he stepped closer. Not enough to intimidate. Just enough to make the space between us feel intentional. His voice, when he spoke again, was quieter. Lower. If you heard what you think you heard, he said, then you are already involved. The words settled deep, pulling something tight inside me before I could understand why. I held his gaze, my breath steady but my thoughts racing. Then tell me the truth, I said. For the first time, he did not answer immediately. And in that pause, I realized something I had not seen before. This was not a man deciding whether to lie. This was a man deciding how much truth I could survive. The silence between us stretched until it felt like the walls themselves were listening. I did not look away. I could not. Because something in his eyes had changed, not softer, not kinder, but deeper, like a door had opened just enough to reveal there was more behind it than anyone else in that room would ever see. The music from the main hall swelled again, followed by the sound of applause, louder this time, echoing down the corridor in waves. The ceremony was ending. The moment everyone had come to witness was reaching its final breath. And I was standing here, asking a question that did not belong in that world. He exhaled slowly, the movement almost unnoticeable, but I caught it. The smallest shift in control. Then his gaze lifted past me for a fraction of a second, toward the direction of the hall, before returning to mine with the same steady focus. The truth, he said quietly, is not something people like you are meant to carry. The words should have pushed me back, should have reminded me where I stood, who I was in comparison to him, to this place, to everything he controlled. But they did not. They only made something inside me settle. Then maybe that is exactly why I should hear it. I replied, my voice lower now, steadier than I expected. His eyes narrowed just slightly, not in anger, but in calculation, like he was measuring something he had not planned to consider. Another cheer rose from the hall, louder now, followed by the distinct rhythm of people standing, chairs shifting, voices blending into celebration. It was done. Whatever promise had just been made, it was now real to everyone except the two of us standing here. He took a step closer, closing the distance just enough that I could feel the shift in the air, the quiet weight of his presence pressing into the space between us. When he spoke again, his voice dropped, low enough that it would not carry beyond me. 5 years ago, he said, I made a decision that protected my name, my family, and everything built before me. Each word landed with precision, like he had said them before, even if not to someone like me. It required something to disappear. My chest tightened, not from fear, from understanding. Not complete, not yet, but enough to feel where it was going. She did not die, I said quietly, the realization forming as I spoke it. He did not confirm it. He did not deny it. But the silence that followed told me everything. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. And the child? I added, my voice barely holding steady. This time, his gaze shifted. Not away, just deeper, like the question reached somewhere he did not allow most people to see. Is mine, he said simply. The words did not rise. They did not need to. They settled between us with a weight that changed everything. I felt my breath catch, my thoughts scrambling to keep up with what I now knew. Not guessed, not suspected. Knew. The hidden room. The voice. The child calling him by a name no one else in that hall had heard. It was all real. And it had been real long before tonight. Then why are they still behind that wall? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. For the first time, something like tension crossed his expression, not visible to anyone who did not know where to look. But I saw it. Because the world you just walked through, he said, nodding slightly toward the hall, cannot exist if they step into it. The answer did not feel like justification. It felt like truth, the kind that did not ask to be accepted, only understood. I shook my head slightly, my chest tightening again, but this time with something else. Not confusion, not fear, something closer to resolve. Then maybe that world should not exist like that, I said quietly. The words hung there, fragile and dangerous at the same time. He studied me for a long moment, his gaze steady, searching, as if he was seeing something he had not expected to find in someone like me. And then, just as the sound of celebration spilled fully into the hallway, louder than before, he spoke again. You think you can change it, he said. Not a question. I met his eyes, my voice steady despite everything. No, I answered softly. But I think you can. The silence that followed was different from any before it. Not heavy, not tense. Open, like something had shifted in a way neither of us could take back. And in that moment, I understood the truth more clearly than anything else. He did not need to be exposed. He needed to choose. And somehow, he was waiting to see if I would make him.